All right. Hello, Fortinos, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is November 10th, 2025, and we got a nice, in depth, exciting one for you guys today. I was feeling a little bit bummed and a little bit down lately in the last couple days, but I thought, no, I told you guys before, the thing that fires me up most is putting together a teaching and doing the teaching. I love it. It is my number one heart's desire is to serve the Lord and what I've been given to do, and I'm excited about it. And this one was the one we're doing today is because we touch on Moses a little bit when we talk about this remnant worker group, but I never, not in a long time, as far as I can remember, done a specific one for Moses in showing his typology in the end of days as this worker group. We've often here in this ministry talk about the Elijah company, and the reason is because I believe that there's a strong probability that a number of us here in this ministry are connected to this Elijah company. The evidence is here. We've gone through all of these things before. We talked about it in the last teaching. So how fitting to have a brother mention that he would like one to be on the Moses group. And so his was more specific, and I'm going to touch specifically on what he was asking about as it gets to the very end, and you'll see how it all ties into exactly what happens as Moses' time comes to an end in his prophetic picture of the end of days. We've talked about this before, that we know the Elijah company is a typology of John, okay? We know this from the first time he came. But in the end, we know there are two worker portions, one being the Elijah, one being the Moses. One of them has a company of people with them, and the other one has a company of people with them. I don't know if they're who these specific people will be, but I believe we're a portion of the Elijah company. But it doesn't mean that some of us may not be a part of the Moses company, being prepared in the revelation and in the understanding. I just lean more to us being a portion of the Elijah company because we're being given prophetic revelation of the end of days through the leading of the Spirit in the revelation of the Word. And that's what leads me more to it. And that's probably a reason why there's been so much talk of the Elijah company. But that's not to say there aren't any who may be part of the Moses company. So what a great connection. What a great time to be talking and to break down this Moses company after having done the Elijah company, which we've known quite a bit. All right. So that's where we're going to go. Also, tomorrow, November 11th, I know here in Canada, and I just checked online to see if it was the same in the U.S., and it is. So to our Canadian veterans and our American veteran brothers and sisters out there, we salute you. We thank you for keeping us safe and watching over us. We know it's not always been great, but we love you and we appreciate you. And that's coming up tomorrow. And since today's teaching probably won't get out till later, for some of you, it will be tomorrow. So thank you very much to all of our veterans out there, past and present, and definitely the good for those in the future to come as well. So with that, I want to show you guys something because it's exciting. For those that don't know yet, if you're not part of the Ministry Revealed Forum and you'd like to join like-minded brothers and sisters watching and praying, diligently seeking and searching, sharing news and events and Bible studies and things that they're finding, you can go to ministryrevealed.com, go to the menu, click on Forum. It'll take you like 5-10 seconds to sign up. It's free. Everything in there is free. And you can join watchmen and women all over the world in there. About 1,400 or so, some more active than others from countries all over the world. The reason I also mention that is I posted in the forum, but you guys, I've spoken about it, but it wasn't yet ready to launch. It is now launched, but with hesitation, and I'll explain that in a moment. The new channel, which is an English channel called Revealing Revelation, has launched with 10 other language translations now available for all who would like to check it out. The problem is, here it is right here, This is the first one. It's the welcome, introduction, and purpose of this channel. You can see there still haven't been many people that have gone to see it yet, but I know many people have asked us over the years to do shorter teachings. Okay? Well, the shorter teachings is because people want to have something where they can point people to come and see. And yes, we have the intro series, but this will be much easier bite-sized pieces that we're going to reveal here and make it easier. Be, give or take 15 minutes long, 10 to 20 minutes in that range, okay, that we're sharing. Well, the first one launched, and I want to show you guys something that is going to blow your mind. Check this out. Here are, as I showed in the last teaching, all of the channels that are Revealing Revelation channels, which is the subsidiary of Ministry Revealed. Now, I want you to have a listen. Let's go to the German one. And I want to show you guys why this is a big deal for us. Okay? And not just for us, but for everybody that we will be able to reach with this. Here we are on the German channel, Revealing Revelation. Listen to this. Are you ready for this? Check this out.
Der Offenbarung zu enthüllen. Die langen 2- oder 3-stündigen Lehren heben wir uns für unsere ausführlichen Deep Dives auf, die wir auf unserem Hauptkanal machen. Der Zweck und das Ziel dieses Kanals ist es, viel...
Isn't that mind-blowing? Now, you see, AI could be used for good or bad, right? People can twist things that are good and make them for bad. And of course, there's going to be things that'll be negative and are already negative. But we're using it for good, brothers and sisters. And you notice that my mouth even moves with the translation. My mouth moves with the translation with this program that I use. And it is just awesome because it translates everything into these 10 other languages. And we could share these bite-sized teachings to bring about the understanding of revelation with people now, friends, family, people in ministry all over the world. Many of you guys have asked for this, and now we can do it, quote unquote, on steroids. Now we can do it with a translation for them, not just in closed captions, but in literal spoken language. But having said that, we still have a bit of a problem or a bit of an issue. And that is when I signed up for this software program, the package I bought, I did not see anything that there was a limit to how many minutes I had every month. And so it turned out I had reached my limit doing this first intro because I was running other tests and stuff as well, and then did it across the 10 other channels. And now I don't have any minutes left till the next month kicks in. And that would mean I could only do one video a month on these channels. And I want to do at least one a week with some shorts being added a couple times a week as well. So I need to buy more packages, more add-ons they call it, to be able to do it. Now these add-ons, I'm only allowed 60 extra minutes per month, but I'm able to use all 60 minutes over 12, so 720 minutes all at once if I want. So I don't have to buy what I initially thought was going to be a year's worth of packages. I can buy one or two at the beginning and use them all up until that amount of minutes is done, while the additional minutes every month kick in again, like they will in December, which come with the initial package. So that's the reason that this is scheduled and hasn't yet released. This one right here, I launched, I made the video probably 4 or 5 days ago. This one I did yesterday, and I'm not able to launch them yet because there's literally $10 and change in the account. I have no money. We're broke. It's been very tough lately. We haven't been able to help too much, except when people send directly for Steve in Uganda as well, where there's been a big struggle. But even here in the ministry, we were grateful for those who did help, and we were able to get the initial program to do it. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize the minutes were limited. So we do need your support to be able to continue to push this forward and to get these out. And with that support, we will be covered for the next several months as we're coming to this great high watch that we've been all watching and praying for. And along the way, we'll be able to do 4 or 5 of these short teachings every month in every language, with a couple of shorts every week as well over these months that remain. So with that, yes, the ministry is in need of your help and of your support. You can go to ministryrevealed.com to the PayPal. You can click on the links here. You can mail us right here directly, addressed to my name, which you can also find in the description box under videos. And we have our PayPal link here as well. So help us. I know many of you guys wanted this. I just, for the longest time, I fought it because I saw the intro series that people can do. But now, with this ability to reach them in so many other languages, brothers and sisters, now I believe is the time. Now we need to make this push. And that's why we're doing this now. All right? So with that, I'm going to also do what I always do, as you guys know. And that is, if you are new to the ministry and you haven't been able to watch those other teachings yet, well, obviously you couldn't because they haven't launched yet. What we always recommend new people to do is when you hear these teachings, I kind of teach with a fire hose. We go in depth and into great detail. But if you don't have the foundation, you need to come to the playlist here or go to ministryrevealed.com, go to the menu and click the intro. This is the intro series right here. We always recommend everybody. And when you go to it, this is what's going to come up. We recommend the first 4 teachings right here. This first one is a 22-minute intro to give you a little insight of what the next 3 are going to get into. The second one is a 30-minute Bible study of what the difference is in the Gospels, specifically the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, in the end being the last will be first, the first will be last. Luke, Mark, Matthew for the end. Why there are what people have called contradictions. Why there are differences in these Gospels within their stories, and why others have called them just perspective. We have revealed here for the past 8 years that the differences are unequivocally, absolutely 100% about prophecy. And in this 30-minute intro, you'll begin to witness it yourself. And from this intro, we've got 3-hour teachings all throughout the years, teachings after teachings, going in depth and further into detail to prove it all out. One example I give is that in Luke, Jesus is arrayed in a gorgeous robe, which means white, radiant, and beautiful. In Mark, he's arrayed in purple, and in Matthew, he's arrayed in scarlet. Well, this white, radiant, beautiful, which is gorgeous, is a description for a wedding gown, like a bright, white, beautiful, gorgeous wedding gown. In Mark and Matthew, you have purple and scarlet, and in Revelation 17, you have the woman riding the beast arrayed in purple and scarlet. What is going on? Well, what you're seeing in this simple one example is that there's a connection to the bride of Christ in Luke, and Mark and Matthew have portions in tribulation. But they're not the same people group that are being spoken about, because one represents purple and one represents scarlet. This is the beginning, the tip of the iceberg that you're going to begin to understand in this second teaching of who the Gospels are speaking to. The third one is going to reveal to you that once you begin to understand who the Gospels are speaking to, you'll realize that the end of days is not 7 years long. The reason people have believed 7 years long is because they have all taught from the Gospel of Matthew. Once you realize Mark is the purple and connected to tribulation, you will come to realize that all throughout Scripture, the other piece is that there's another 7 years that is connected to the seals and connected to Mark's group. It is 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets, and a short period of time called above, which is connected to Luke's, which is 50 days. All of this will begin to reveal itself once you begin to understand who the Gospels are speaking to, and then go to Luke, Mark, Matthew. And if you specifically go to their discourses, oh my goodness, everything will start to open to you. And you will realize that the argument that people have had over the years, whether pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib, are true, They are all true, and there's a reason why they're able to teach these things from the Gospels, from the epistles, is because they're all true. Yet people have fought and debated over them. Pre-trib is connected to Luke. Mid-trib is connected to Mark. And post-trib is the return of the Lord, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of trumpets. It's absolutely amazing. And then the fourth teaching is the big one. And the reason it's a big one is because it'll go in and it details for you why we had never yet understood this. One, because it wasn't the timing for the Lord to make it known. And two, because we have all been taught foundationally from the Gospel of Matthew. And what we've been told is we take a little bit from Mark to fill in the blanks of Matthew, and we take even less from the Gospel of Luke to fill it in Matthew, instead of realizing the differences within these Gospels isn't because we're to take from them to fill in the story of Matthew, but that they are each giving us their own prophetic picture of the end. And there are three groups: pre, mid, and post. It's absolutely incredible. But because we have all been taught for hundreds of years from the foundation of the Gospel of Matthew, everything the church has ever looked at is 7 years, is 7,000 when it's all over. When you understand this reality, you'll understand even the greater, bigger picture of all of creation from in the beginning. That's how powerful these four intros are. All right? And that's why I share them at the beginning of every teaching. So with that, let's now get into our brother worker in Christ, Moses. This Moses of the is to come. Remember, as we've talked about, we know that there are two worker groups of the end of days. We know that their typology comes from Luke's gospel. They are the two on the road to Emmaus, which is the end of Luke's gospel. When you go to the end of Mark's gospel, we see that the two of them went to tell the other ones, and in telling the other ones, they didn't believe and weren't ready. And only in Mark's gospel in chapter 16 do you see where the Lord rails on them for not believing the two that came before. These two, in that context, is prophetically a picture of the Moses and the Elijah companies that come first. Now, watch this. When we go to Romans chapter 10, I believe it is. Yeah, chapter 10. Look at what we see about something Moses says. In verse 17, it says, "So then faith come by hearing, and hearing by the word of God." Hello. "But I say, have you not heard? Yes, verily, their sound went unto all the earth, and their words unto the ends of the world. But I say, did not Israel know?" Now listen to this. "First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you." What do we know about this, guys? This isn't just from the time of Christ in the time of is. This is all about things of the is to come, is it not? This is about provoking a people. We talked about this not too long ago. What has been so provoked? What has been so provoked by the Gentiles, by the Americas, by the Gentiles who have come in? What has really provoked the Jews to anger? Sure, there's been some of it, because the Christians and the Jews are against the Christians, and, because of them claiming Christ and being God and so forth. But what's the real jealousy that's about to come? The mid-trib. Not the pre-trib, the mid-trib. You see? Who are the ones that he's going to provoke to? He's going to use the Gentiles, as he says in Romans 9. And in verse 25, and he says also in Hosea, "I will call them my people which were not my people, and her beloved which was not my beloved." Who's the beloved? That's the pre-trib bride. And a group of people of the Gentiles, which represents the Mark group, the Gentiles grafted in with the house of Israel, who will be part of the mid-trib great multitude rapture. You see, provoking them to jealousy until what? Until they're raptured. Once they're raptured, can you imagine that jealousy? And then what happens? The Lord is also jealous, we read in Zechariah 1. But in Zechariah 7, like the seventh year of seals, in chapters to years, the Lord is no longer jealous. Remember that? In chapter 8, the Lord is no longer jealous, right? And Israel will be no longer jealous, because after that great multitude, they're the ones being brought back into the land to rebuild. You see, and who do we have in connection to the one who first told them? Moses. Who is a connection to the typology? There will be this modern day Moses as there will be this modern day Israel. We're seeing his connection right off the bat. Now look what happens with the story of Moses. With the story of Moses, remember, we have two groups. We talked about the Elijah company in the last one. This one is now the Moses company. We know that Elijah was the John the Baptist type. But we know in the end of days that there are two types. They're both a type of a John the Baptist who comes first. And what happened to John the Baptist? John the Baptist was beheaded. Elijah was not beheaded, but was taken up into a whirlwind. In the end, wait until you see as we dig into this. Wait until you see this coming of the Lord on his mountain and coming as a whirlwind at the exact time of the end of seals, connected to the whirlwind Elijah company, who is still alive and remain, that would go up in that whirlwind. But what happened with John the Baptist? John the Baptist was beheaded. He died before that time, right? And in the prophetic, that's the dying towards the end of seals, towards that end of the 6th, start of the 7th year of seals time frame. And who is the prophetic type who died in history, who is one of the two? Moses, of course. Moses, of course. And in the story of John the Baptist, we get the story of John the Baptist's birth in Luke chapter 1, and the events that took place with John the Baptist. And John the Baptist, when he was born, what did they do? They hid, right? When she was pregnant, and then when he was born and he was hidden and taken away. And what do we get of the story of Moses? Moses is born. She saw that he was goodly, right? He was very handsome. Saw that he was good. And what happened? Hid him away. Hid him away, and then put him in this little ark of bulrushes, and put him down the river, right? Hidden again for 3 months. The same type of picture being played out with John the Baptist in a typology with Moses. And we've got this typology that we've talked about over the years, that Moses is the type of John the Baptist dying at the end, whereas the Elijah is like those still alive that will go up in the whirlwind, will be taken into the third heaven, into paradise, when the Lord comes at the end of seals. And we're getting the same picture. John the Baptist, who is clearly based on scripture given, is the Elijah type, but yet doesn't die. And we've got those as the Moses type in the same typology, from birth and being hidden to then dying when Christ comes and then takes over the job. See how that works? Now we get to Exodus 9. And in Exodus 9, what do we see about? Here we are in Exodus 9, and it's the story in Exodus 9 where now Moses is bringing about these judgments from the Lord and bringing them over Egypt, right? We see the cattle is about to be destroyed, except for the cattle of Israel. We see that hail is going to smite through the land of Egypt and destroy beasts and destroy the fields, and that the flax and the barley is smitten because it was in the ear, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten because they were not yet grown up. See that? But the wheat isn't yet grown up. Well, we know that there's a first fruits of the Feast of Weeks that's going first, connected to the pre-trib with the remnant of the Moses company and Elijah company that remain, and that there's the spring wheat, which is connected to this group throughout the mid-trib. That'll be taken in the mid-trib. They represent the spring wheat, which is planted in the spring after Passover and grows until the fall, but cannot be eaten until Passover the following year. That is an exact picture of this group represented by the house of Israel and the Gentiles who are grafted in with them, that will then be taken at the mid-trib great multitude. But did you notice what's happening? Famine's coming, right? There's a famine coming for these guys. So now we're starting to see it start to play out. Well, if we go to Revelation 6, what do we see? At the third seal. So the great sword is given, world war breaks out, and what's going to come? Famine. Famine. Revelation 6, verse 6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, and a measure of wheat for a penny. There's your wheat. A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. See that? And hurt not the oil and the wine. We see down here, hunger and death. At the fourth seal, we're seeing already this connection to this prophetic picture that's taking place. And then look what we see. In Exodus chapter 10. And the Lord said unto Moses, go unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the heart of his servants, that I might show these signs before him. Okay, what do we know is coming? We know that the destruction is coming, the destruction of the firstborn, right? The death and the killing of the firstborn. We come to chapter 11. Here's the story of the firstborn, that the firstborn of them shall die. Where are we in all of this? If we go to our dual calendar, where are we? Okay, it's all started. The Moses and the Elijah company are chosen here. They're here with the Lord during the 40 days. And then we're in what? This 2 years on this side, which is going to be like 2.5 years on this side, be in the third year. Okay? Does anything have to happen between here and here? No. Well, in the last 50 days before here, yes. But between here and here, we were expecting potentially the Revelation 12 sign, but there might be just a lack still of understanding of when that would be, which might be at the beginning of the 50 days, which is something we've taught on. It's in Luke 21. Okay? So in this conversation of where we are right now, it's during all of this period right here. There's no fleeing into the wilderness. This is the time of the red horse rider right here. This is the time of the red horse rider at the beginning of the 14 years from Nisan 1. And it goes up through here. It's red horse rider time. What else is happening? Well, the third seal. This third seal is when famine kicks in. And what are we seeing? In the story of Moses, we're seeing the story of now famine kicking in. But now it starts to get more exciting in relation to the events that will take place with Moses. We come now to Exodus chapter 12. Exodus chapter 12, we know now very good, don't we? The Lord is now telling them what? This shall be the beginning of your months, and it shall be the first month of the year unto you. Where do you think he is? Right here. See this line right here? This line right here is prophetically in the is to come, where the Lord is speaking to Moses, that this is going to be the beginnings of your years. And where is it? Where are we? Right here. 2.5 years on this side in the third year, or 2 years on this side from where everything, what we would say, literally began, where you have the red horse rider, but you had the 50 days of events that came first. Okay? Watch what happens. The typology is right here of Exodus 12. And what does he say to him? It's about the sacrificing of the lamb, right? And you're going to strike the doorposts, right? It's going to be unleavened bread. It's the time of the Lord's Passover. Let your loins be girded about. And then what are they to do? They're to flee in that evening, right? In that evening, they flee. They had to flee, see? And Pharaoh roses up, tells them to go in that evening, and tells them to leave. When he tells them to leave, where are they fleeing? They're fleeing at Passover, right here. Right here, in Passover, just 2 years and 2 weeks 15 days right here. This is the time when what? They now flee into the wilderness. This is the time they flee into the wilderness. What is specifically this time of them now fleeing into the wilderness? It would equal, if we have understood the year of all of this to begin, going back to the teachings of how we got to the 70th year of Jerusalem here, how it ended up the 7th year of cycles right here, and a new cycle that only has 2 more 7s left for the 14 years before the final Jubilee, which is a count all the way from Christ when he made the decree in Luke chapter 4, which I am going to go back and touch on just for a moment because it's so powerful when you realize when Christ was truly born with no year zero, because according to the Gregorian calendar, there is no year zero. So from the birth of Christ, we know that in the birth of Christ, in Luke chapter 3, he began to be 30 years old, and it was in what? The 15th year of Tiberius Caesar. Did I just put that there because it made sense? No, I put it there because the history books tell us that September 17th, 14 AD, was the year that Tiberius Caesar began to reign, meaning the 15th year is 30 AD, right here, 28 to 29, sorry, not 30 AD, but 28 to 29, was the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar's reign when Jesus began to be 30, exactly the count from when he had to have been born. And he declared about a year later, in Luke chapter 4, he declared the Jubilee in his decree from Isaiah 61. We track this, and we tracked it all the way through the Jubilee being the first year of the next set of 49 of 7 times 7, and we tracked it all the way through. And the final Jubilee is 2039, 2040. There's only 2 sets of 7 left, and they began this past fall. But the end of days doesn't begin until 50 days before what? Nisan 1. But this 50 days is a portion of the count from what? From the Tishri. These are the events of the above, the Luke portion, that happens in this first portion here before the red horse rider. And what are we seeing? The events of Moses right here. What are we seeing? The Lord tells them, this is the beginning of your years. And what happens? They observe now the Passover, and they flee on the 15th, which is the evening of the 14th. And they flee into the 15th, right? This is it right here. What year is it? Yeah, 2028. So if we have understood the year correctly and the season and time, the Lord is telling them this is the beginning of your years and the beginning of your months. And when are they fleeing? Right here. They have their Passover. It's in the evening right here. And now they're fleeing when Pharaoh and they wake up realizing all the death, and they now flee. This portion of the time of their fleeing is directly connected to Luke's abomination. To Mark's abomination in chapter 13. For those that are new, you just heard me say in the opening that the differences in the Gospels of the Synoptic Gospels of Luke, Mark, Matthew playing out in order at the end, the last being first, Luke and then Mark and then Matthew. We see that when we go to the discourses, I'm doing powerful teachings, which is the not the next teaching, but the second teaching that was 20 minutes, is this intro leading into the revelation of the discourses of the end of days. And the next 2 teachings after that one will continue to go into the discourses in these bite-sized takes, following each other in the revelation of the discourses. It's so awesome, and I can't wait to post them and to have them in all these other languages. When you understand these differences, and you come and see that Mark's discourse is not using the same wording, there's a reason. Look at what it says. Standing where it ought not. In Matthew's gospel, it says standing in the holy place. Okay? This word standing can also mean to place, okay? To abide, to covenant, but it also means to place. So to place where it ought not. This is not about the temple, the stone temple of God being rebuilt in the midst of seals. This is about another temple and something being placed in that temple that should not be placed. And what are they doing at this point in this abomination of desolation? It's exactly the timing we've shown where they're now to flee into the wilderness in the midst of seals. After all the chaos of World War III, what ends up happening at this point? It's the time of the mark. It's the time of the beast showing up on the scene. It's the time of Revelation chapter 13. The beast will now take over the power from the leopard, from the bear, and from the lion. He now takes over control. And of course, he has his 10 horns that now receive their crowns. And at this point, what happens? He's given power to continue 42 months. This is when he gets his official power over the earth. 42 months begins. Those 42 months will begin at the same typology of the Moses and them fleeing into the wilderness. And what is it connected to? You guessed it, Passover. Passover of around 2028. If this is all about to begin in late January, February, early February this year, this is the time of the fleeing into the wilderness. This is the time when the beast gets his what? 42 months, which takes you what? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years and a half, which is what? 42 months. You want to see why this gets wild? Check this out. In Numbers 33 with Moses, in verse 3, and they departed from Ramesses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. There you go. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. And what do we get? I always remember this. I shared this again not long ago. I remember our sister Jana sharing this with me. How many stations, how many places did Israel flee into with Moses? 42. These are called the 42 stations in the wilderness. They went at this time of fleeing. It equals 42 stations, 42 places in the exact same period, in the end of days, in the prophetic exact typology of timing, 42 months, where the beast gets his power to continue during these 42 months, 3.5 years, directly connected to the 42 places they stopped at during this time. You see how it's all prophetic? It's absolutely incredible. And who was leading them? Moses, of course. Well, do you remember what happened while they were in the wilderness? Oh yeah, they started whining and complaining, right? They have now fled into the wilderness. It's the Mark 13, the abomination, fleeing from the beast and the false prophet, because the mark of the beast and refusing to take it. Remember what we taught on this? There is no antichrist or false prophets mentioned in Luke's discourse, and there is none mentioned in the first portion of Mark's discourse. Why? Because they don't show up until the time of the abomination, and that's why you see them here. Because it's the time of the fleeing into the wilderness. And when they're in the wilderness, in Moses' day, what did they start to do? They started to murmur. They were complaining. They were complaining that what? I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, at even you shall eat flesh, and in the morrow you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. What were they complaining about? That they had nothing to eat. Oh, you just brought us out here. After fleeing from Egypt and all these things, we could have just stayed there and continued to eat and lived our lives under that oppression. But no, we got to come out here and die in the wilderness. So they ask for flesh and for bread. And what does the Lord God do? In Numbers 16, starting verse 13, and it came to pass that at even the quails, there's their meat, right, came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. Verse 15, and when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna. For they wist not that it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. When is this happening, brothers and sisters? You guessed it. In the midst of their time in the wilderness. In the midst of the 42 stations along the way, right? Well, guess what? What do we know about the 7 churches? Right? What do we know about the revelation of the 7 churches that we revealed years ago? And that we continue to build on of the details within the revelation that first began years ago. We know that we are in the end of this Laodicean age. And at the moment of the pre-trib, it starts over again with the 7 churches. It begins right off the bat at the pre-trib and the 50 days. This is a representation of the 7 days and the new apostles that will be chosen for the end of days. Smyrna, when the Lord returns after the 7-day wedding and the 40 days begin, and now the end of days will start. What does Pergamum represent? Pergamum with Constantine represents the coming of that 2.5, that in the 3rd year or 2 years, right? That we just talked about right here, when he's going to get his power to continue, and it's going to be the time of the mark of the beast. This is Mark's discourse when they flee into the wilderness. Ah, you mean like this? It's the period of them now fleeing into the wilderness? Yeah, you guessed it. Which church is that connected to, by the way? It's connected to the prophetic end of days, Pergamum, when the beast comes on the scene with the false prophet, and it's the fleeing of Mark into the wilderness. Well, watch this. That's connected to what? The church of Pergamus. When what? The Lord knows where Satan's seat is, because this is when Satan is going to give his seat and power and authority, as Revelation 13 says, and he's going to give it to the beast who is also being uplifted by the false prophet. And who do we have here? We have Balaam, the false prophet, and Balak, the beast type, the Antichrist, the false Christ. We're going to get into this in a moment too. All connected to the time of Moses. It's going to blow your mind. But do you know what ends up happening in this? Verse 16 in Pergamum. The beast and the false prophet are now on the scene. The 42 months are on. They've now fled into the wilderness from Mark's discourse, all connected to Moses and his portion and him leading them to these places in the wilderness. What does it say? Repent, or else I will come quickly, and I will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the hidden manna. Do you understand why this is in Pergamus? Why isn't it in some other 7 church? Because it's a direct prophetic revelation to the end of days, with the beast and the false prophet in the time of Moses, them fleeing into the wilderness, and they're complaining about, Lord, why did you take us from there? We could have kept eating. And the Lord gives them what? He feeds them with quail and manna. Exactly in the prophetic midst of the same timing. Isn't that awesome? I think that is absolutely, it's not even a little bit connected prophetically. It is an exact prophetic typology to what's going to play out in its timing of the end. Then what comes next? Now what's going to happen? And let them, here in Exodus 25, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. Now what's going to happen? A sanctuary for them to dwell, for the Lord to dwell among them. This sanctuary that they're to build. We've taught on this numerous times. We've got a specific teaching on this, and it's going to be in one of these shorts that are coming up in the next 2, after the first 2 that are coming. It'll be one of the next 2 that will break this down as well. You want to know why? Because once you see this, we talk about this all the time. Once you see these revelations, you cannot unsee them. And why is this so powerful? They're to make this sanctuary of the Lord. Well, this was the temple in the wilderness they were to build, right? This was the temple in the wilderness. And all of this is connected to Mark's time of the abomination of desolation, standing or to place it where it ought not. But I've explained that it's not the one in Matthew, where the temple will have already been built in the first half of trumpet judgments at the start of the next 7 years. This is all during the midst of the first 7 years, right? Because we're at this point here. They have now fled. And during these 42 months, they're complaining about not having this food, and they could have stayed. And the Lord's going to give them this manna from heaven. And it's right in the chapter to the end of days, to the church of the end of days, directly connected to this time. Well, what's happening during this time? It's the time of the mark of the beast. Hello. It's the time of the mark of the beast. So, what should we find here? Well, we go to Exodus 26. We find out that this temple for the Lord, this sanctuary for the Lord, for them to dwell, him to dwell amongst them, it says, "Thou shalt make the covering, a covering for the tent of rams' skins, and of what? Badgers' skins." Which means the tabernacle in the wilderness was a portable sanctuary covered in skins. And for those who have been around for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's go to a picture of it. It was a portable temple that, as they traveled through the wilderness, through these stations, these 42 stations, as the 42 months of the end of days, this portable temple is covered in what? Skin. It is a portable temple covered in skin. And if you've been around, or if you haven't been around especially, you will understand how powerful this revelation is. Because Mark's abomination of desolation, standing where it ought not, is all about when the beast comes to power and the Antichrist tells everybody and gets everybody to worship him. It's the time of what? Taking the mark of the beast. The mark of the beast is going to be put on or in the hand of what? People who will worship him, who will turn to the side of the beast, who will worship his image, or will take his mark or his number. Where is this mark being placed? On the right hand or the forehead. Of what? Of a portable temple covered in skin? Yeah, that's right. The saints, the portable temple of God. You see, the temple of God dwells within man until the end of seals. It's not until the end of seals. It's still the portable temple covered in skin that the Lord God dwells within. This is the temple being spoken about. This is the temple covered in skins. That is the portable temple in the midst of seals during those 42 months. The physical temple that the beast will walk into when he's brought back and when Satan is cast down, that temple is the temple from Matthew that will be the holy place that they will step into at mid-trumpets once Satan is cast down and the pit is open and the beast returns. That one will be the physical temple having been rebuilt, not the portable one covered in skins. When we got this revelation several years ago, it was another one of those, oh my goodness, crazy, unbelievable awesomeness. There were two types of temples. And in this end of days of seals, that portable temple as it is now is man covered in skins, covered in flesh. You see now this direct connection to the time of Moses? This portable temple covered in skin? This timing of the manna coming during the time of seals? Because the four churches mentioned in chapter 2 of Revelation is the time of seals? Is the 50 days above till the coming of the Lord at the end of seals? And then the next ones is while the Lord is here at the end of the 6th and is there at the 7th seal until the cutoff and the beast coming and so forth to the end of Revelation. That is an incredibly powerful one. Absolutely. It's, I don't want to say one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites. I got so many one of my favorites. And that was an incredible revelation in the midst of these 42 months. It's awesome. Let's keep going. Now watch this. What else is connected to this time? Well, of course, Revelation 13, right? Remember what happens in Luke 17, starting in verse 24, when he's going to be as light shining from one end unto the other? This is when he returns feet down. This wording is found only in Matthew 24, verse 27, talking about when he comes in his day. But we have the but first. And this but first is about the Lord coming as the Son of Man for 40 days as Noah. And this but first is the same type of wording we read in Luke's discourse. In Luke chapter 21, verse 12, when he says, but before all these, meaning before the red horse rider, he's coming as the white horse rider, and these are the things where he's going to be rejected during his 40 days. But what do we know about the third one? Everything is in threes. Look at what we see in verse 28. Likewise also. So he tells us the last one and says, but this first, which is his 40 days, and then likewise also. And this is when he returns feet down. What do we read about it? Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold. They planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained down fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Of course. When is this? It's Revelation chapter 6. So we go to Revelation chapter 6, and we see the coming of the Lord, right? Him that sits on the throne, and hide us from the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Not only that, what did it say that they were doing during this time? Why is it, where's this destruction as Lot, right? As Sodom and Gomorrah. For that, we just go back to Mark 13. What's going to happen when after the tribulation of those days, when the Lord is seen, when the Lord is coming with paradise, with heavenly, on heavenly Mount Zion, the stars of heaven shall fall. It's the same context, the same conversation that we're seeing of what's going to take place when the Lord comes at the end of the 6th year of seals, when the Son of Man will be revealed on heavenly Mount Zion. And what were they doing in this time before he came? The two key words are bought and sold. Why is the bought and sold a big deal? Because it's directly connected. It's the same two words. Watch this. Let's go to Luke 17. Luke 17, verse 28. And what do we see that they were doing? It says, and they bought G59 and sold G4453. Let's go to Revelation chapter 13 for those who are taking the mark of the beast. Okay? The ability to buy and sell, as you guys all know, happens for those who will take the mark. And what is it called? What does it say? That when they do, they'll be able to, where is it? That they might buy, there it is right there, G59 or sell G4453. Do you notice in this conversation of Luke 17? In Luke 17, there's no mention over here. There's no mention of the Luke portion of that 40 days. It's only in the portion connected to seals. The buying and the selling. Directly connected to this time when they're to flee into the wilderness at this abomination of desolation, which is the mark of the beast, and the reason why you suddenly have false Christs and false prophets show up until after that tribulation, which is the end of the 6th year seals, when the stars of heaven shall fall like a tree casting her untimely figs, which is the direct description of the destruction that came on Sodom after Lot left. It's wild stuff, guys. Wild, wild stuff. Let's go to now Exodus 34. Watch this. In Exodus chapter 34, okay, watch what comes. Listen to what he says. In verse 10, He's talking about making a covenant with the enemy. Okay? That they shouldn't fall for it, because the Lord has a covenant too. And he said, behold, I make a covenant before all thy people, I will do marvels. Okay? What do we know about this? Don't we know that the Lord himself is going to be making a covenant at the end of seals? Right? Right as it comes to the end of seals, we see this in Jeremiah 31, and he's forewarning them here that he's about to make a covenant with them. And look at what he says. Be ready, because I'm going to make a covenant with you. And what do we know happens at the end of seals? Which I believe is connected to the seventh seal. The Lord is going to make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And we know what happens when a new covenant is made. There must be the sacrifice of the testator, which is a conversation we try not to talk on too much. Okay? We know what this is equaling. So listen to what he says. And he said, behold, I make a covenant before all thy people, I will do marvels, such as have not been done in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among which thou art shall see the work of the Lord, for it is a terrible thing that I will do with thee. Okay? What is this terrible thing? Well, let me show you this. Here's another little side note. We know Joel in order, beginning, middle, end. And here's the Lord coming on his holy mountain, heavenly Mount Zion, right? With the noise of a flame, a fiery, destroying everything as it comes. You're going to see that described as the Lord too. And what do we see? What do we see? We're looking for, what did he say? A terrible thing, right? And what do we see? It says in Joel 2:31, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon to blood before the great and the terrible day of the Lord. The exact same prophetic timing. Now listen to this. Observe thou that which I command thee this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Hittites, and these guys. And then it says, take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest. Okay? He's going to be doing this terrible thing. They're all going to witness. But it's not until the end of seals, the end of the 6th year of seals. But he says, until that time comes, is what he's saying. Take heed to yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee. Watch this. Lest it be for a snare in the midst of thee. Watch this. Remember, all of this is connected to what? All of this is connected to this Pergamus time and this time of the Dark Ages. Okay? In this 42 months, the beast and him having his power. Let's go to this word. What did it say? We were in Exodus 34, and not to be caught in this snare where you're going into these other lands. Watch this. Pergamum, Satan's seat, Balaam and Balak, right? And it says, so there's Balaam and Balak, the false prophet and the beast. They're being scattered now. It's the time of the mark of the beast. He's going to feed them of the manna. And what did he tell them to be careful of? Not being caught in the snare of these places when you go. What is the word for snare? Stumbling block. That is snare. Not to be caught in the snare in these places where you're going to go. And listen to this. For thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. See, break their images and so forth, right? Don't go and worship them. Verse 15, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, listen to this, and they go a-whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of his sacrifice. You see that? What did it say? Go whoring and eating of things sacrificed to their gods. Huh. Funny how that works, right? Look at exactly what we're reading here at this exact same prophetic time connected to the time of Moses. To cast a stumbling block, a snare, before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication. You see how perfectly it's telling us the exact same story? Or I should say, it rhymes with the same story. This is all connected to the time of Moses. You want to see what's crazy? Remember when we taught in the last one, and over the years as we've talked about this with the Elijah company? Who was Elijah contending with? Jezebel. This is the contention that Moses and them fleeing into the wilderness and receiving of the hidden manna, and to not fall prey to the stumbling block snare of eating things sacrificed to idols and committing this fornication, whereas Thyatira has its connection to the Elijah company and her trying to seduce through her fornication the servants who are the prophets of the Elijah portion connection in the midst of seals as well. Crazy how that works, right? Both of them explained right there in the midst of the portion when the 42 months of the beast during seals begins. Look what happens now in Numbers chapter 1. These were the renowned of the congregation, the princes of the tribes of their fathers, heads of thousands in Israel. I look at this, you can look at it because you see all of the tribes being mentioned. But I look at this and I see heads of thousands. Now we know there's the tens of thousands and there's the thousands. The tens of thousands are connected to the pre-trib, right? 10,000 times 10,000. But you have what? The heads of thousands. Well, we know that from the 144,000, as a picture of the thousands of thousands, this is heads of thousands. Moses has a company with him. What do we know? Moses has a company with him. What do you know about Elijah? Elijah had a company of prophets with him. And then he's like, yeah, but I'm the only one left. And the Lord says, yes, but I've reserved 7,000 more. And we talked about that. There might be something more to a portion of them going to the end. You see, there will be those who are alive and those who die. This is all connected to that remnant group with Smyrna. And the Moses group is the Moses leading the people who are coming to salvation in the midst of the tribulation of seals and leading them into the wilderness to the places of protection in the midst of seals. And there's his workers of thousands. We come to Numbers 24. You guys know this well in Numbers 24. We talked about it a lot, right? We see the three comings of the Lord connected to Reuben, connected to Joseph / Ephraim, and then connected to Judah when he returns feet down on the Mount of Olives. And we see that there was the three curses, that there were the three blessings when Balak wanted curses against the people of Israel. And then the Lord God puts Balaam into a trance with his eyes open, having given those, right? And then he's shown what will come in the latter days, which is the end of days. When their judgment will come when? When there shall come a star out of Jacob, a scepter, right? Ruling with his rod. And who is that? When he shall be given dominion. Who is this? This is Christ coming at the end of the 6 years of seals and bringing this judgment upon them. This is all connected as well. We're talking about this time from being brought out with Egypt and so forth. You see, look at what the connection is. This first group connected to the pre-trib and the Lord coming to begin his 40 days as the white horse rider, connected to Luke's discourse. He's coming connected to the tribe of, to the south, which is Reuben, which is the man with the pitcher of water, which is Aquarius. But what does it say about when he's coming at the end of seals? Look at what the connection is. Hello? God brought them forth out of Egypt. The exact same picture that we're talking about being brought out of Egypt. Who's going to be the one to bring them out of Egypt? Well, of course, it's the Moses and the Moses company bringing them out of Egypt into the wilderness. And then at the end, who's the one taking them over into the promised land? Which is at the end, which is in the 7th year of seals. Which is when he comes as what? As the star of Jacob, as a scepter, right? With his rod to rule in the midst of his enemies. That, of course, is, ta-da, lo and behold, the end of the 6th year, the coming of the Lord, terrible day of the Lord to judge all of those nations that will come against him with the beast. And it says in Revelation 2:27 and 28, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, as the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers. Again, Daniel chapter 2, when he destroys the image of the beast and it all comes crashing down, even as I received of my Father, and I will give him the morning star. There it is, when that judgment comes. To when they came out of Egypt, and now he's going to bring them into the land of the promise. Who brings them into the land of the promise? Not Moses. See, because Moses is the typology of the John the Baptist dying in the beheading before the Lord comes and takes them over, before the Yeshua Joshua takes them over. But here we are now, back in Deuteronomy chapter 30. Listen to this. Verse 3. That then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the utmost part of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. He's bringing them back from captivity here now. This is the point where he's starting to say, I'm going to now bring you back from all the places I scattered you. Remember that? It's the exact same context that we read about in Jeremiah 31 that we've talked about so many times. Right? The remnant of Israel. Behold, who are the multitude? Who are the multitude of the sandals of the sea? Those are the Gentiles that were grafted in. They're going to be raptured to paradise that he came with, that he went to prepare, and he will receive them unto himself. That's why everybody's freaking out at the end of the 6th year of seals when they see him coming. But there's a remnant of Israel and Judah that will be brought back to Israel. And what does he say? Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coast of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travail, together a great company. Who is this great company? For those that don't know, this word for great company in Jeremiah 31 is a great multitude. A great company being a great multitude. It is the picture of the mid-trib great multitude, a remnant of Israel and Judah also being brought. And who do we see? They shall come with weeping and with supplications. Will I lead them? I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Of course it's Ephraim, because Ephraim is the ox, right? Ephraim is the unicorn. Ephraim is the one who is the second blessing and connected to those being brought out of Egypt and now being brought into the land of their promise and destroying all of the enemies. Exactly where it's supposed to be. But then what does it say? Remember what else it said? And he's going to give them the possession of their fathers, the land of their possession. Well, we know this from Hebrews chapter 11. Who are those who go pre-trib? Those who were as Enoch. They had faith that God was who he said he was. They wanted to please God. They diligently sought God, believing that he was a rewarder of them that diligently sought him. And then you have the 40 days of the Lord connected with that remnant worker group, who is when the Lord comes for 40 days in the typology of Noah. And then what do we have? The mid-trib, great multitude, which we've talked on many times. The reason they're looking for a city which has foundations is because in the midst of seals, only the foundation will get built in Jerusalem in the midst of seals. And who's being brought to this place? By faith, Abraham, when he was called out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise. What were these guys told they would be bringing into? This place that their fathers had possessed. And now they will go in there and they will multiply above their fathers once they're brought back from the scattering. All of it in order. What about chapter 33 of Deuteronomy? Watch this. In Deuteronomy 33, wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth. We'll touch on that in a second. From Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000s of his saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Okay? With what? He came with 10,000s of his saints. Who are the ones that went pre-trib? Or who are the ones that died along the way? Millions, tens of millions, maybe even a couple, 300 million Christians, proclaiming Christians in the midst of seals, will die from the beast and famine and so forth. Remember, they're the ones under the throne as well. And they will return with them. Because he's coming with what? He's coming with paradise, remember? He's coming with paradise. In fact, when we go down further, you'll even see, verse 19, they shall call the people unto the mountain. What mountain? That's right, the mountain of the Lord. But watch this. Shined. I went and looked up this word shined. This word in the Old Testament, the first place it's used is right there in Deuteronomy 33:2. You want to see another place it's used? In Psalms 50, verse 2. Check this out. In Psalms 50, starting in verse 2, out of Zion. Remember when the Lord comes, the heavenly Mount Zion, the mountain of the Lord, he's coming with paradise? The perfection of beauty, God hath shined. Pretty crazy, right? Our God shall come and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous round about him. Let's go look that up. Psalms 50. Verse 2. There you go. Out of Zion, shined. It's the same word. Only used 8 times. Show self. Why show self? Because that's when he's coming. Remember Luke chapter 17, 28? You have the when he comes, and it'll be a Sodom and Gomorrah, that second group. At a time when people had been buying and selling. And listen what it said again in verse 3. And God shall come and shall not keep silence. A fire shall devour before him. Did we just see that in Joel chapter 2, the time of his coming at the end of seals, in that time when he's coming with heavenly Mount Zion? And it shall be very tempestuous. Check this out. Remember I told you to remember this earlier? We know that when he comes at this point, it's going to be connected with a whirlwind. What is this tempestuous round about him? Come like a whirlwind. Take away as with a whirlwind. Huh. Isn't this exactly the time we know a group in the Elijah company that remain alive at that point go up in a whirlwind? Funny how that works, right? Funny how that works. How about Zechariah chapter 2? Remember what it said also? That he would come and a fire devour, and round about him this whirlwind, and it's this whirlwind of fire. What do we know about Zechariah chapter 2? He's telling them in advance. Remember that? We know that there's going to have to be a protection. We shared this a few videos back. There's going to have to be a protection in the first half of trumpets while the first 4 trumpet blasts are taking place. And the city and the streets in Jerusalem, the temple, is being rebuilt. We know that the Lord is this fiery wall of protection around it. And we see it spoken about right here in Zechariah chapter 2. And said unto him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls for a multitude of men and cattle. For I, saith the Lord, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her. You see? All connected to when he comes at the end of seals, and they'll be brought back into the land. He will be the glory in the midst while they're being protected from the things round about on the outside. Again, Deuteronomy 33. He's coming with what? The 10,000s of his saints. And it says, Yea, he loved the people, all his saints are in thy hand. Well, if we go to Revelation 6, remember in the 5th seal, those who were slain for the testimony for the word of God, they were given white robes and told to wait until what? Revelation 7, at the timing of the great multitude. So at the timing of the great multitude, we know the Lord is coming with what? He's coming with paradise, right? The mid-trib great multitude people are the ones going to the was caught up, which is paradise. Who do you think is already in paradise? Who's already going to be in paradise? The multitude of those that were slain for his testimony. 10,000s of the saints that were slain for his testimony. Remember Revelation 13, verse 10? When the beast gets this time, it says, He that leadeth in captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. Patience and faith, patience and faith of the saints for what? Not to tell anybody else about them, not to rat on them to save themselves, not to kill people that are trying to come against them to kill them. They're going to have to stop themselves and abstain themselves from doing these things. That is the faith and patience of the saints. And fleeing into the wilderness with this Moses company. But many along the way will, of course, be killed by the beast and the system of the beast. These are the saints that when he's returning with heavenly Mount Zion will be what? Coming with them? Coming with them because he's coming with heavenly Mount Zion, and he's going to be what? Receiving all the rest of the saints who are still alive. That's exactly what we're seeing in Revelation 7. Those who have white robes that were waiting for the Lord to finish this portion, and those who had palms in their hands. Remember the teachings we did on this years ago? Those who have palms in their hands are those who are alive. This is why we read the palms in their hands first, not in Luke's gospel, but we read about it in Matthew's gospel at the triumphal entry. It's in Mark's gospel. We see it first in Luke, Mark, Matthew, in order, not in Luke, but in Mark. And it's a picture of the triumphal entry is the Lord when he's coming is a typology of him coming at the end of seals. And we see that the ones that have palms in their hands. It's the ones that are still alive compared to the ones who died. That's exactly what we're seeing. All of this connected to what? The same connection to the story of Moses. Watch this. I thought this was pretty cool too. Let Reuben live and not die, and let not his men be few. Right? Those connected to the beginning, the first fruits, right? That first fruits portion, the eldest before the youngest. Right? The pre-trib and then the remnant, that Elijah company type. And watch this. We have now Joseph being talked about, right? Joseph. Remember, these are the blessings as Moses is coming towards his death. And in Deuteronomy 33:13, and of Joseph he said, blessed of the Lord be his land, and of the precious things of heaven, for the dew and for the depth that coucheth beneath, and for the precious fruit brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things brought forth excuse me, by the moon. Now listen to this. And for the precious things of the earth and the fullness thereof. Let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph, and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren. His glory is like the firstling of a bullock. Remember that? The Messiah ben Ephraim, Messiah slash ben Joseph slash Ephraim, about the Lord when he's coming at the end of seals, that the crown would be upon his head, right? The blessing on the top of his head. This is connected to the Joshua, Yeshua, that we see. It will pass now from Moses to Elijah, who is of the tribe of Ephraim, the bullock. What do we see a connection at this time? The fullness thereof. That the precious things of the earth and the fullness thereof belong to the Lord. Well, lo and behold, don't we know this? Don't we know this? In Psalms 24, if we go to the same context of Psalms chapter 24, connected to this end of seals, start of the 7th year of trumpets, when you understand the whole Nisan, right, compared to Tishri side, what do we know about it? Listen to what it says. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. In the chapters to years, this exact same timing of the coming end, not yet the end of Moses, but right towards the end. Right to the time when the fullness of the Lord is coming now. Which is what? The fullness of the Gentiles. Remember this in Luke chapter 21? In Luke chapter 21, it says that this time would be for the Gentiles until the fullness of it, right? Luke 21, Jerusalem being compassed about. It's the vengeance of the Lord to them that give suck in those days. Verse 24, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right? Led away captive into all nations. Until what? Until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, which is the end of seals, which is the time when the Lord dwelling within, when the portable temple covered in skin, when that portion comes to an end, and the physical stone temple would be built again. With the Lord there as what? When the Lord will be there on heavenly Mount Zion as high priest and king. Listen to what it says. Verse 3, who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart. This clean hands is the clean hands, not the same as those who were clean already, that went pre-trib, but these who will have had to have made their hands clean. Okay? This palm of the hand. Remember the palm trees we were talking about? Leaves of the palm tree? Those are the ones who will be able to go. Those who will have cleansed their hands will be able to ascend the hill of the Lord. All of this connected to the same context of what's taking place in the time of Deuteronomy 33. How about Psalms 50, where we were at, and we see this connection taking place? This connection, where do we see? The wicked. So at this time of the coming of the Lord, we've got this wicked group. This wicked portion, that's also there. When he's coming at the fullness with heavenly Mount Zion. Remember, to flee from the terrible and wicked day of the Lord. And it says in verse 16 of Psalms 50, but unto the wicked God saith, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes? Or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth. Verse 18, When thou sawest a thief, then thou contendest with him, and hast been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue framest deceit. Thou sittest and speakest against thy brother. Thou slanderest thine own mother's son. These things hast thou done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such an one as thyself. But I will reprove thee, and set them in order before thine eyes. Now consider this, you that forget God, lest I tear you in pieces, and there be none to deliver. Whoso offereth praise glorifieth me, and to him that ordereth his conversation aright will I show the salvation of God. In this same context of him coming, of him being this tempest round about, this whirlwind that has taken the mid-trib and the Elijah company, having come with the saints and gathering them all together, you now have what? This other group, which was wicked. And in Luke chapter 3, in the Luke in order of Luke 1, 2, 3, 4, you guys know that in Luke chapter 3 is a prophetic typology of the coming of the Lord at the end of seals. And what does it say? And all flesh shall see the salvation of God. Of course, because they will have seen him coming at the end of the 6th year of seals. And then it says, then said he to the multitude that came forth to be baptized of him, O generation of vipers, who hath warned you to flee from the wrath to come? The same group, in the same context of time, that will come to him, and of course are all going to come to believe. They may play that they will believe. Some will, but we know as trumpets come and what's going to happen at mid-trumpets, some of these guys, right, the Pharisees and Sadducees types, they're not all going to. We're seeing this exact context in Psalms 50, following this exact same context of time of him coming with heavenly Mount Zion. It's wild to be able to track this all. Absolutely wild. Watch this. In Deuteronomy chapter 34, what do we know comes at this point? Now is the time of, that's right, Moses' death. At Moses' death, it's the same prophetic picture time frame as Elijah, as the John type, who was the Elijah in the is of when Christ was here. Now we have this Moses from the was also being a prophetic picture of Moses when he's dying before he gets to go into the promised land. All right, before they get to pass over. And what do we see happens? Joshua, the son of Nun, is the one filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moses laid his hands on him, and he's going to be the one who takes them over. You guys know who this is. Let's just go to it for the fun of it. In Deuteronomy 34, we now come to Joshua, Yeshua, right? Joshua, Yeshua, the son of Nun, which is like the Father, perpetuity, forever, right? Perpetuity, like the Father, forever. And what happens? What is even the time of year? Well, we go to now Joshua chapter 1, the very next chapter after the end of Moses. And at the death of Moses, who takes over? Yeshua. Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus, in the picture of Joshua, who is the son of perpetuity. And what are they going to be doing? He's going to be the one taking them over the Jordan. Wasn't that funny? Didn't we see this same type of thing? This same story in, again, Jeremiah chapter 31? When he's going to take them over, and he's going to take them over in dry land, right? I will cause them to walk the rivers in a straight path wherein they shall not stumble. Who's the one that's going to do it? Ephraim. Because Ephraim is his firstborn. Ephraim is of the tribe Joshua is of the tribe of Ephraim. Joshua is the one that's going to take them over. When is Joshua going to be the one to take them over? He's going to be the one to take them over at Passover. Right? Rise early, and he's going to take them over. And when they see the Ark of the Covenant pass over before the people, we all know that they're coming at Passover. They're going to be taken over at Passover. Well, if we go back to our dual calendar, we know that they had what? 42 months? At the 42 months, what happens? They were at the 42 stations in the wilderness. What do we know happens at the end of the 6th year on the sowing and reaping side? All we have to do is go to Mark chapter 13 in his discourse, where it talks about the coming of the Son of Man after that tribulation, not at the end of all tribulation, but it says at the end of that tribulation. But in those days after that tribulation, when the sun and the moon shall be darkened. We've seen that a couple places, right? When the stars of heaven shall fall. Hey, that's the end of the 6th year of seals at the coming of the Lord. When they're going to see him coming in the clouds. And then what do we see about it? In Mark 13:32, but of that day and hour knows no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. This is, of course, the Feast of Trumpets. And those who have studied it should know this very, very well. It is the day and hour no one knows, right here, which in the sowing and reaping goes from fall to fall, whereas the year counts go from spring to spring. So over here, 42 months come to an end. The Lord is coming at the end of the 6th year, the 6 days as 6 years in the transfiguration story of Mark. So what happens? The Lord's coming on the day and hour no one knows. Okay? When he comes at the day and hour no one knows, which is the Feast of Trumpets, a 2-day period which nobody knows which one it will be, it's the equivalent of the after 6 days. Hello. It's the after 6 days, which is 6 years. But what did it say, if you recall, in Mark chapter 9, verse 1? A very different wording than Luke, Mark, and Matthew, right? Or than Luke and Matthew. This is the only one where it's a past tense, where they will have seen him come. And he said unto them, verily I say unto you, that there be some that stand here, which shall not taste of death. See, those are the ones still alive with the palm branches, till they have seen, past tense, the kingdom of God come with power. This is when he comes at the end of the 6th year of seals, when he's coming on heavenly Mount Zion, right here, and destroys all the enemies. Now, is Moses dead yet at this point? No, it would appear the passing of Moses, this typology of John the Baptist, as one of the worker groups of the end, the opposite or the side partner to the Elijah company. It would be in this point, somewhere in here. Wasn't that crazy? Because if you recall, right here is a picture of John the Baptist, 6 months, came into power, right? 6 months before what? Before Jesus showed up. 6 months before Jesus shows up. What do we know this picture is? The Moses company, Moses, who is the John the Baptist, and you have what? They will have seen him come here. He will have destroyed all of the enemies, and they will be gathering the great multitude and so forth, sealing the 144. And what happens? The Moses dies. Maybe Moses was in captivity at that point, right? As the John the Baptist type, being captivity at that point. And then who's going to take them over? This is where we show you, and we've talked about in the past, we know that the mid-trib great multitude does not happen when the Lord comes on the day and hour no one knows. In fact, there is no gathering of people to the Lord at the day and hour no one knows in the pre-mid post. This mid-trib and the coming of the Lord in Mark is his coming when he's going to destroy the enemies first, when they will have seen him come with power and glory right here. They will see him come, but they don't get to go yet. Why don't they get to go yet? Because you have to follow the storyline. You have to follow the story. When did Joshua Yeshua take over for them and bring them over? Passover. He brought them over at Passover, right? Which means they're not going to come in the mid-trib great multitude rapture until 6 years is literally over on this side. Hello. And they'll be in the midst of the 7th year on the sowing and reaping side. Exactly as the Revelation has shown us. After 6 and in the midst of the 7th on the sowing and reaping side. Why? Why is it going to be Passover? Well, glad you asked. Watch this. You guys remember this? Those of you, again, who have been here for a while, we've talked about this numerous times years ago and touch on it every once in a while. There is a difference between winter wheat and spring wheat. Winter wheat is planted in the fall, takes root before Passover, so late fall into winter, and spring wheat is planted around Passover time and doesn't take root until after Passover. Fall wheat is called, because it takes root before Passover, it is called yoshon, meaning once it's harvested, it's ready to begin to eat. There's no wait. But spring wheat and winter wheat, by the way, is called old wheat, or like Leah and Rachel, the older before the younger. Spring wheat is also called new wheat, like Rachel, who is later after Leah. Remember, she didn't start having her kids until after the 7 years. Hello. And this spring wheat is called kadosh because it is planted after Passover. So even though it's harvested late fall, once they harvest it, they cannot begin to use it and eat it until the following year at Passover, at which point it is also now called yoshon. Kadosh, they can't take it until it becomes yoshon the following year at Passover. Okay? This is something we talked about years ago, and it's all, you can go read it and look it up for yourself. Okay? That's what this is telling us. See? Because it is not yoshon until after the Passover of the following year. And it's all with new spring wheat. See? The older Leah before the younger Rachel. You know why that is? It's even given to us in this story of Jeremiah 31, which we've connected to the story of Moses and the Lord when he will gather them all back and bring them over into the promised land. At the time of Moses' death, Joshua Yeshua, Jesus, who is coming at the end of the 6th year of seals, will take over and bring them over. And listen to what it says. Remember this? Jeremiah verse 8 again. Who is Ephraim, who's going to be the firstborn taking them across, who Joshua Yeshua is of the tribe of Ephraim because he's coming as Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim in the end of days. And listen to what verse 8 says. And I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travail, together a great company shall return thither. And I remember that when the sister shared this with me, this is when you go look into the Septuagint translation of Jeremiah chapter 38, verse 8. Behold, I will bring them forth from the north, and will gather them from the ends of the earth to the feast of the Passover. And the people shall be a great multitude, and they shall return thither. Isn't that absolutely powerful? When you understand everything we just shared in the breakdown of the timing of Moses, of being in this famine time, then fleeing into the wilderness, 42 stations to 42 months, the Lord feeding them the manna, then the Lord coming, replacing the story of Moses to Yeshua, Joshua, and Moses being the picture of a John the Baptist type as Elijah, as the alive, and the Moses as the one who dies. And look at what we see. The mid-trib, because they will have seen him come with power and glory. But the mid-trib isn't taken until Passover because they are the second-born. They are the new wheat. The firstborn, the first fruit, were the ones that went first. The first fruits are the ones connected to the Spirit. These are the ones who Christ came for, who are those of the house of Israel and the Gentiles grafted in with them. Right here. At Passover, which would be, again, if we've understood the timing of this season that we're in right now, we're in the fall of 2025 with the prayerful understanding of the revelation of 70 and the sowing and reaping years to the end of the final Jubilee, waiting for this time right here, which is late, around January 26th, give or take a day either side. In this time frame, even to early January, early February of the second or so. In that time frame, if we've understood the years, all of this is a prophetic type story to the story of Moses and them being brought back into the promised land and the mid-trib great multitude rapture, when the Lord will take them over at Passover, just as it was when Joshua took over from Moses. Why is this such a big deal? Because we know, unequivocally, unrefutably, we know that the three feasts of the Lord, when they are not to come empty-handed, are the Passover, Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles. All three of these are the pre, mid, and post of Luke, Mark, and Matthew. The middle one, the Feast of Weeks, is the pre-trib. And you might say, well, if that's the case, why are they going to be going at the end of January and the connection to the Lord coming for his 40 days being at the New Year of Trees? The answer is found in previous teachings where we got the revelation of John 4 and why the Lord said that it would be 4 months early. You think the wheat, the harvest of the wheat is ready to take place over here. I tell you, look at the fields already. They are white, already to harvest. The pre-trib is connected to Enoch, the Feast of Weeks, but in the end of days, it will be observed 4 months early, from the 8th of Av, and the Lord coming at around the 15th, so that around that 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and the Lord coming back around that 15th, 16th to begin his 40 days, connected to the timing of the New Year of Trees, which is exactly 4 months earlier from his birthday and exactly 4 months from the Feast of Weeks. Why? Because the last two feasts are what? 6 days to the 7th and 7 days to the 8th. It is the answer of the revelation of the three feasts of the Lord. Pre-trib is the 1 day of the Feast of Weeks. Unleavened bread is the Passover connection, and it is what? The bread of affliction. And how does it work? It is 6 days as 6 years of seals. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day is the solemn assembly. And what is that? The 6 years. But remember, they didn't leave at the fall. Remember that? They left over here, right? This connection to this timing, and then the Lord saying here, and this is now they're fleeing into the wilderness. You see, because it's connected to a Nisan, but not until Nisan, right? The red horse rider, and then they're fleeing into the wilderness. There's this gap of time, which is the pre-trib, which is connected to the pre-trib Feast of Weeks 4 months early. But watch this. 6 days as 6 years. And in the 7th year is the solemn assembly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in the 7th year is the solemn assembly. And what's left? 7 more years. And then the 8th year being the new beginning of the Jubilee. For those that haven't seen this, watch this. Now we go to Tabernacles. Tabernacles is 7 days. And there is no 7th day assembly for Tabernacles. Just like it is a full 7 years. In trumpets, Even though our focus was seals, in trumpets, it is 7 years. At the end of the 6th, on the day and hour no one knows, the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, and it will be 1 year and 10 days as the days of Noah, where he is bringing judgment against the beast, the false prophet, all who came against his people, and bind Satan for 1,000 years. That is going to be 1 year and 10 days long. So he's not gathering anybody to him in Matthew's discourse on the day and hour no one knows. He's coming to bring judgment as the days of Noah, which is 1 year and 10 days long. He is not gathering those that flew away in the wings of an eagle into the wilderness until the midst of the Jubilee. After he has destroyed them, proclaims the Jubilee on the 10th day of atonement, and renews the earth, as you read in Ezekiel chapter 47, and then gathers them back at the end of 47 and 48 into their land. So what's different with tabernacles and the 7 days to 7 years is there is no solemn assembly in the 7th, because you know why? Tabernacles has what's called the eighth day. Let me show you even in 2028 where we are. In 2028. The year doesn't matter. It's just to make a point. You have your 7 days of tabernacles as 7 years of trumpets, and then you have what? The great 8th day of assembly. That great 8th day, for those who haven't heard this before, is the Jubilee, new beginning, 8th day, first day of the next set of 7, which is also called the 8th day, and is the final Jubilee. The reason that they go and are being brought, I should say, to the Lord in the midst of the 7th year of a sowing and reaping cycle, and that they're not going having seen him here, is because their connection is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is the Passover. It is a perfect connection, and it is revealed also in the harvests of the new wheat. And even though the harvest is ready to come in here and it starts to be gathered, it will not be brought in until Passover, which is exactly why Mark in chapter 9 verse 1 says they will have seen him come with power and glory. Hence why the Moses, John the Baptist type is the ones dying here. But in the Elijah company, at the coming of the whirlwind of the Lord, those in the Elijah company still alive are taken up in that whirlwind. Brothers and sisters, it is powerful, so incredibly powerful when you understand these meanings, these timings, these purposes being revealed. It's absolutely incredible. You understand why Joshua, the high priest and king, in Zechariah chapter 6, because Joshua is the Yeshua. Joshua is the one in Numbers 13 who Ephraim of Hosea, the son of Nun, Moses changes his name to Joshua, which is, of course, Joshua Yeshua, the same one from Numbers 13. The exact same prophetic picture of when he comes as Yeshua Jesus, who will take them over into the promised land. And why is that? Because that's exactly what the prophecies have said in the 12 tribes in the wilderness, with the heads of Reuben, Ephraim, and Judah, whereas Dan represents when Satan at mid-trumpets is cast down to bring about that final judgment. He is Messiah ben Ephraim, Messiah ben Joseph / Messiah ben Ephraim, which is exactly why we see him described in Jeremiah 31 as Ephraim being the firstborn. At the time of what? The mid-trib great multitude rapture, at the time of Passover. When he's going to be high priest and king, the rod of his strength out of Zion, when he will rule as Melchizedek, high priest and king, like Joshua, Yeshua. And let me finish with this, because this is pretty wild. This exact same time, right here, who will rule the nations with a rod of iron, when the Lord himself has come down with heavenly Mount Zion, which is the end of Revelation chapter 2, the ruling with a rod of iron, which is Numbers 24, when they were shown, when the prophet, the false prophet is shown, when that judgment will come against them, which is the end of the 6th year of seals time frame, which is what we see in Daniel chapter 2, when he will crush them and break the statue, and the stone will become a great mountain. Then you have the mid-trib great multitude was caught up, like Zechariah, like 2 Corinthians chapter 12, the was caught up mid-trib that go to paradise, which is the same from Jeremiah chapter 31. In this great multitude was caught up that are going at the time of Passover. What happens next at this point? You have the woman fleeing into the wilderness, and you have the 1260 days, which is that first portion of the about first half of trumpet judgments. The next 7 years about to play. What is going to take place during this time? During these about 3.5 years is the war that Michael and his angels are going to have against the dragon, against Satan and his, until Michael defeats them and casts them out. You want to know what's wild as we close out with this? Let's go to Jude chapter 1. Jude only has one chapter. So let's go to Jude chapter 1. And I'm going to try to do it without stopping this timing. There we go. Jude chapter 1. Let's have a read. Let's just start in verse 3. I'm going further down is really what I want to get to, but I'm going to show you this timing. First, Jude 1, chapter 3. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that you should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. There's a common salvation, but then there's those about contending for it. You see this difference? It's kind of some of the stuff we talked about, right? And so where are we now? We're at the end of seals, right? Which was once delivered unto the saints. This time to the end of saints is over. That's the end of seals. This contending with the saints and the patience of the saints is to the end of seals. And now it says in verse 4, for there are certain men crept in unawares, excuse me, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. Remember who these were? Right? Those taken into chains of everlasting darkness. When are they going to come out? When the pit gets opened. Right? When does the pit get opened? After the whole Sodom and Gomorrah place? Remember Luke 17? Right? The fireballs, the Sodom and Gomorrah part, means sometime after that this is going to happen. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh, are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal life. There's your end of seals time frame. And at your end of seals time frame, there's going to be men crept in unawares. What do we know is happening during the first half of trumpets, after the mid-trib and all that, during the 1260 days? Michael is going to be fighting against the dragon and his angels until he gets cast down and the pit is opened. What happened after Moses died? What happened a little while after Moses died? The devil wanted the body of Moses. Did you see that timing? Yet Michael, the archangel, contended with the devil. What do we have in Revelation 12? After this time, we know the Moses of the end of days is dead. The was caught up happens. And now Michael contends during the first half of trumpets with the devil. We're seeing a replay. Do you see that? We're seeing a replay of Michael who fights, who the archangel who contends with the devil. And the dispute was over the body of Moses. And in the end, at the end of seals, Moses has died. The great multitude comes in, and it's the time that begins with Michael contending against the devil. Told you the pattern is not a carbon copy, obviously. The end of days is going to be much more brutal than it was in any of those before them. But you're seeing the exact storyline, this exact typology play out, being repeated in this story of Moses right to the end with the contention of his body with Michael, the archangel, contending with the devil. And right after, in the prophetic end of days, you have Michael contending in a war against the devil. Isn't that crazy? Absolutely incredible. This rhythm that is so, like we said, it's not a carbon copy, it rhymes. And this rhyming with the story of Moses and these details that we've pulled out through his story and how they're laid out for us in the 7 churches, how they're laid out for us in the book of Revelation, how they're laid out for us in the story of the discourses relating to Mark's time, is absolutely incredible. It is not a maybe that there is a Moses company and an Elijah company. There absolutely is. It's being ready in this time that we're now in, right now, as we breathe, as we speak, as we watch, as we pray, as we diligently seek Him, to be ready for that time. Whether it is the Lord to choose us, whether we're to be chosen for that time or not, what is happening is there is unequivocally a people being prepared in this right now. That it appears we are of those groups. Some. It doesn't mean we must be or have to be, because it may also be that in the revealing of these revelations and sharing it with others and being able to put these teachings in so many other languages to help reach others around the world, that in those teachings and in these teachings, we reach others who may be them or also be in part with us them. This is powerful stuff, guys. Powerful, powerful stuff. There is no doubt a Moses company, as there is a coming Elijah company as well. You've seen it here in the Elijah, and you have now seen it in the Moses. Both unequivocally connected to the portions of seals in their portions and in their times. Showing that, is there another during trumpets? Is there another Moses Elijah type? Is there another 2 witnesses that are the type during trumpets? Absolutely. But they are not the Moses in the Elijah company specifically. They are the end of days Zerubbabel and Yeshua Joshua. There are 2 sets of witnesses of the end of days. It's powerful, powerful stuff. And what we just covered in the last 2 teachings is the Moses and the Elijah companies of the end of days, from the beginning of seals till the end of seals. And it's powerful. It's exciting. I believe we're preparing. And I hope we're all going to continue to diligently watch and pray, seek and search. And prayerfully, we can all help each other and help the ministry in reaching many, many more in support, in prayers, in sharing with others. Brothers and sisters, it's a wonderful time, and we get to be a part of this and to reach all who the Lord wills, who the Spirit leads to open up their eyes, their ears, and their hearts. I love you. I appreciate you always. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.